Welcome, Andrew. Sola Rosa, new album coming out. I just gave it a whole listen today. It's actually an excellent record. So
thank you, Marty.
I'm loving it. And you were here. I'm in my studio B today because we got somebody shooting a video in the other room. But you were over here getting a picture of yourself with maggot brain. Explain that to me.
I was.
Here it is.
Nice. I had to do a piece for, it was one of those pick your favorite albums. And it was like, well, I can't really pick a favorite album, but that's definitely up there in the top 5. So
that's a good one to go with.
Yeah.
Good place to start.
Yeah.
And there's some definite funk on this record. So there you go.
Yeah. Well, I try. I'm no George Clinton, but
nobody can. So the album is called Chasing the Sun. It's your 7th album. It's out on September 25th. And my understanding is that it's 5 years in the making is what I read. So before we go track by track through it, give me a little overview about why it's taken so long.
Yeah, well, my MO for the album was to just take my time with it. And I kind of felt like with the last couple of records, they were rushed. Well, I didn't feel like they were rushed. They were rushed.
Right.
Due to financial pressure, mostly. Sola Rosa had done a lot of international touring and kind of made a few bad decisions. And so, that started affecting how the records were made. And no one should ever be kind of put under those pressures, really. It's, you want to be as close to 100% happy with it as you can when you get to the finish line. So I just said to myself, I'm not going to bow to those pressures, and see if I can make it through without falling to that. So and it just took 5 years. There was a point at the 3-year mark where I thought it was finished. But I'd had such a great time collaborating with so many different people that I kind of just thought, wow, what if I just try and collaborate with some other hot cats around the country and see what comes of it?
Cool.
And two of those people, Lewis McCallum and Jeremy Toy were kind of, they just really sort of opened things up and changed the direction of where the music went. So
because this album is all about collaboration, isn't it? Which is kind of different for you.
Yeah, so I kind of started out, it started out as a studio project, and I'd spent my whole sort of teens and 20s playing in bands, and I wanted some autonomy. I wanted to make my own decisions, and so sort of Sola Rosa came out of that. But after the first couple of records, I realized my musical limitations and started to collaborate with people that could actually play, and then you realize that it's, that's what music's all about, collaboration. So
right.
I kind of, with the Magnetics album in 2014, we decided that we wanted to do that album as a band project and not work with any outside, well, as far as musicians go anyway, no outside sort of players. But, obviously there were lots of vocal collaborations from around the world. But other than that, it's since kind of the Moves On album in 2005, it's predominantly been about collaboration, yeah.
Okay. So we can get into the collaboration as we go through the tracks, because obviously the collaborations will make themselves evident. So we got 12 tracks to talk about. The first one is called For the Mighty Dollar, and it features Kevin, Mark Trail, and Charlene Hector. So what shall you tell me about that one?
Yeah, well, I started working with Kevin around 2013, I think. That was one of those kind of situations where my manager at the time said, there's this guy, Kevin Mark Trail, he's with the Streets. He comes over to New Zealand all the time. You should link up with him and record a track, or just meet him and see what comes of it. So that was a real kind of took a chance. I'd never met the guy. I had no idea who he was or anything about him, and he came in and we did a few tracks together, and he's just a really lovely guy.
Right.
It's like one of the best humans you can meet. And so
gotta go
from that point of time, we started doing shows, and he was either living here or in Australia. So he'd just come over for shows, and he toured with us for many years after that. Yeah, and so I've worked with him ever since. Every album,
right?
I always pull Kevin.
And what can you tell me about the song itself, For the Mighty Dollar?
Well, it was. I think with that track, I kind of knew, for me, instantly that it was a good track. I kind of thought it was the strongest track on the album, right from even kind of in demo form. It just had some sort of resonance to it that I connected with, and so I had it as an instrumental for quite some time before playing it to Kevin, and we were in London at Tileyard Studios, and Kevin just said, "Yeah, I like that one." So he just jumped on. He's the kind of writer that he just writes lyrics on the spot and just goes in and does it, and he's quick, and so that's how that came about. And then Carleen Hector's I've worked with her before as well on the Magnetics album, and she's kind of best mates with Kevin, and she sings with Basement Jaxx, and she's a real big gun vocalist in London.
Big gun.
She is. She's got an incredible voice, and she works with a lot of high profile acts over there as either as a performer or a vocalist. So yeah.
Right. And she's on the second track as well, Runnin'.
There she is.
What can you tell me about that one?
Again, a lot of these tracks are just, I made the music here in New Zealand, and then sent it out to just various different people that I wanted to work with. And they'd just they'd pick a tune generally, or pick a couple.
Right.
And I arranged for these sessions at Tileyard Studios in London, and people would just kind of come to me. I had a little room there. And so Ronan was Shark 7, who I believe was recommended to me by Kevin. So again, I didn't know much about him. I just took a gamble, and he turned
so
up.
when you work with somebody like that for the first time, when you don't really know too much about them, and let's face it, music is a pretty personal thing. How do you get that communication going between the two of you?
Well, it either works or it doesn't, I guess. Sometimes it's awkward. So, majority of the time it works out. I remember with this particular track, we were kind of struggling a little bit with lyric writing. So there's a few moments on this album where I actually would jump in and help out with the lyrics, which I don't particularly like doing. But I said to myself, a couple of albums back, that if I wasn't happy with lyrics, I should do something about it on the day, because there'd been a few recordings where I didn't like something that was sung, or a particular line or whatever, but I didn't do anything about it, because I didn't want to offend or upset the singer, and then you have to live with that,
Yeah. Well, that leads me to, I was thinking, with all these collaborations, do you have to worry about the fact that you would lose your own vision among what ends up happening on the record, because you have so many other people involved? Do you have to kind of keep that in the back of your mind, that it's your record?
I don't have any problem with that. I don't, it's always my record in the back of my mind, and so I yeah, I don't have any problem saying no, or
Right.
culling something if I don't particularly like it. Or there's you learn diplomacy as you go. You kind of my early days I probably wasn't that tactful with working with singers and whatnot. But you get better at it, and you learn ways to to sort of get to a place where you're both happy without being an asshole. Or
Yeah, that always helps. So the third track is called Something Good, and it features Sandy Phoenix, who my understanding is she's from Australia.
She is, yeah. She was recommended to me by my music publisher, Native Tongue, who, I mean, at this stage, I kind of had a complete record. Right. I just had a few tracks left over that didn't have vocalists attached to them, and I just mentioned to Native Tongue that maybe I could go to Australia and work with some people over there, and they gave me some recommendations, and Tandy was one of them. Yeah.
Cool. So, she kind of reminds me, I don't know if you remember listening to a singer by the name of Carleen Anderson back in the 90s, but the same vibe. Nope. She's the daughter of Bobby Bird and Vicki Anderson. So
okay.
He had a few records out back in the day.
Yeah.
But same kind of thing. And then You Don't Know is a very funky thing, and it's got horns and sax and all sorts of things, and features Josh Berry. Who is that?
Well, again, Josh Berry was a wild card for me. So what happened with that one is I turned up to Tileyard one day, and I booked these, I booked a room basically. And the artist that was going to turn up, sent me a message saying, I can't come today. Can I come in a week's time or whatever? And it's like, no, I've flown from New Zealand for this. So, I'll be going next week. But so they couldn't turn up, and I just went into the reception at Tileyard and was talking to the guy that worked on reception, and was like, I don't know what I'm going to do. Maybe I'll just leave for the day. And he was like, well, I manage this guy, Josh Berry, if you want to check him out. So I think he sent me a track or something, and I had a listen, and I was like, yeah, bring him in. We'll see what happens. Yeah. And it was one of my favorite collaborations on the album. He was just like he was just a pro, he worked really fast and came up with a hook fast, and it was all over in about an hour and a half.
That's pretty cool. It's good to keep an open mind, huh?
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah.
And then there's Chasing the Sun, the title track, which features a Kiwi singer by the name of Wallace.
Yeah.
Tell me all about it.
Again, she was a recommendation from Native Tongue.
Mm-hmm.
So I hadn't heard of her, but I checked her out on Spotify, I think, and I just liked her tone. She's got a very, I don't know, Billie Holiday-ish kind of quality to it. And she clearly kind of worked in a similar realm to me as far as kind of, beats and soul and
right.
So yeah, she came into the studio in Sydney, and we ended up recording a couple of tracks, and yeah, it was great.
Since this is the title track to the album, what can you tell me about the song itself?
Yeah, well, this is the thing with this song is I recorded it initially with Kevin.
Uh-huh.
And I liked, I'm trying to remember how the song goes now, but I
it'll come to you.
I liked certain parts of Kevin's, but I didn't like all of it. So it was a bit of a conundrum for a while. I was like, what am I going to do with this? Do I redo it with Kevin next time I see him? Or, and then I kind of had the idea that maybe it'd be good as a sort of almost like a duet.
Right.
So yeah, we went in with that in mind, and I think it was Wallace worked, was very complimentary to Kevin's vocal, and and it just kind of came together. Yeah, got lucky.
That's good. And speaking of lucky, on the next track, you got our man Troy Kingy on it, who he was just here a couple days ago because his album came out on Friday, and he played a little song. Man, he's amazing. I can't say enough great things about him. So how did you get him involved in this?
Well, as you might have noticed, there's not a lot of Kiwi singers on the record, and that's not because I didn't approach lots. I did. I approached heaps, but for whatever reason, you know, they didn't work out. It didn't happen. But Troy's did, which I'm really glad about. It's, you know, like I just sent him a couple of tracks, I think, and that was the one he picked, and he recorded it remotely up at his studio. And it wasn't till many, many months later that I actually met the guy.
That's amazing.
We did it.
The song is called Star to Star, and it's a pretty funky little thing because obviously if you're going to have Troy on it, it's going to have something going for it. So when you met him, what was the conversation like?
Oh, it's great. We actually did a show together. Troy came in and did did all the male vocal parts at a gig we did down south. But we just talked about music, and as you do, and and I sat around the accommodation with Troy playing. Troy actually was playing me tracks off this album that's just come out now.
Right.
Months before it came out, and just playing on his guitar and strumming in the room. And I was like, man, this guy's he's a phenomenon.
He's something really special, that's for sure.
Yeah.
Now, the next thing is called Searching for Love, and it features somebody named Kiko Bunn.
Yeah. Kiko Bunn, I actually saw perform with the Next Men from the UK. So I was over touring in the UK, and Shapeshifter were doing a show at the O2 Forum in Kentish Town. And the Next Men and Kiko Bunn were playing. Well, I didn't know that Kiko Bunn was playing. The Next Men were playing, and I was DJing before them.
Oh.
And so I finished DJing, and the Next Men came out, who I'd known about for years and liked, and they'd done a remix for me many albums back. And but then the singer came out and started sort of, doing his thing, and I'd never heard of him before, but I kind of went away after that and did my homework, and really liked his vibe and in his music. So I just contacted him and said, next time in London, would you be keen to get together and try and work on a track? And I actually, just because he's kind of known as a reggae singer in lots of ways.
Right.
And so I only had one reggae-ish track for this album, and I played that to him, but he, that's not the one that he ended up doing.
I was going to say, this one doesn't sound very reggae at all.
No. And that track actually never made it to the album in the end, but so that's how I ended up working with Kiko.
Cool. Then Shine On is another one with Tandy Phoenix.
Yeah.
So
it is.
What can you tell me about the song there?
Initially, I recorded that with a guy by the name of Sincerely Wilson in the UK, and I loved his chorus, but I didn't love his verses. Yeah, so I was trying to figure out a way to make the verses work, and in the end, it just sort of became a bit too hard.
Right.
And I wasn't heading back to London for another time. I'd already been 3 times by that stage, and I wasn't going back. So I had such a great time with Sandy that I put it to her, like, if I come back, would you be keen to do another track? And that's the track that we ended up doing. Yeah.
So did she actually contribute to the vocal or to the lyrics and to the music, or she just add her vocal?
Well, she wrote the whole vocal,
Oh, great.
Hook, lyrics, everything. Yeah.
Nice.
Yeah. So we redid it. We redid it. Yeah.
And then there's No Idea featuring Jerome Thomas.
Yeah. Yeah. It's one of my favorites. Jerome Thomas I had seen on, there's a series called Colors, which I think comes out of Germany maybe, where they showcase new talent. So there's, like Noah Slee's been on there, and that's where I first heard Jerome. So, as I was doing these sessions, I've always got a wish list of singers, and I'm always kind of researching, and whether on Spotify or SoundCloud or whatever, trying to find interesting artists to collaborate with. And so, I happened to discover him through this Colors series.
Right.
Contacted him, and yeah.
I enjoyed the drum track on that one. Is that Julian playing the drums there?
Julian Dine plays all the drums on the album, unless it's me on beats, but yeah.
It's got a real kind of analog, real drum sound feel to it. What he's doing.
Yeah, he is. Julian, amazing.
And then we go to So Many Times, which is another one with Kevin.
Yep. Yeah, it's probably one of the earliest tracks that I made for this album. Not sure what I can tell you about this that
right.
Basically,
it is what it is. Huh?
Yeah. Just Kevin picked it and we did it, and yeah.
Cool. Well, we'll move on to My Love, which features Eva Lazarus. Who is she? She's
from Bristol.
Huh?
So we were doing a show in Bristol. We were touring around, and the venue that we played at, I was just having a conversation with the venue owner, and me being me and always looking for vocalists, so it was just like, who's the greatest in Bristol right now? Who are the good, who are the up and coming artists that might be good to collaborate with? And she said, "Have you heard Eva Lazarus?" Which I hadn't, and so went away and checked her out online, and she found out she's done a bunch of stuff with Mungo's Hi-Fi, and so yeah, she caught the tube from Bristol, and we wrote the song in this tiny little room together, which was slightly awkward as we'd never met each other, and
that's pure collaboration there.
Yeah, but she was a consummate professional, and yeah.
So it sounds like you had almost better luck finding people to work with you overseas than you did here in New Zealand, because you said you asked a bunch of people here and they said for whatever reason they couldn't do it.
Absolutely. Yeah. I mean, yeah, I don't know what it is. Maybe I've been around too long, or
I know that feeling.
Yeah. Maybe people are like, oh, I don't know, that Sola Rosa guy, I don't know, he's been around for 20 years, but it worked out really well because we were sort of touring, and so when we weren't touring, I'd book time in the studio, and
right.
London's amazing for that because you can just be in the centralized hub, and people can just travel from the outer suburbs and and be in the studio with you within kind of 10-20 minutes or whatever, and so it worked out really well. Plus you get to see the world, and it's way more exciting making a record in London for me than it is making it in my basement studio in Avondale.
So we got one more song to talk about. Closing Statement is the last one. It features Wallace, and I have to tell you that I was attracted to the bass line. It was very Sly and the Family Stone kind of, If You Want Me to Stay. Is that what you were thinking of when you were putting that together?
Wasn't necessarily thinking that, but it's definitely an influence. Yeah. And Matt, our bass player, is he's a real Sly and the Family Stone freak too, so we're always trying to go for a bit of that.
Yeah, it's like one of the great bass lines of all time, so you can't go wrong.
Yeah, absolutely.
And what can you tell me about the song itself? Why is it Closing Statement, and why is it closing the album?
Well, it's closing the album because you're always looking for the best track to close an album, and it just so happened that one was called Closing Statement, and I thought it just worked. It worked as an outro song. And it worked in the title, so that's how it ended up as the
Gotcha.
Last
Very
track
good. Well, we got through all 12 tracks. So what the plan is, the record's out in a couple of weeks on the 25th. Of course, nobody knows what we can do or can't do at that point. Are you going to try and do some gigs?
Yeah, we've got a whole bunch lined up. In fact, I just got another one offered through this afternoon.
Oh, good.
But, whether we can do them or not, who knows?
That's crazy, man.
Yeah, I certainly hope so. I mean, we've started rehearsing the tracks for this album because you finish the album, then you have to learn the album.
Yep. So who's your group that you're going to be touring with?
There's seven of us, including me.
Right.
Dixon Nacey's our guitarist.
Yeah.
Matt Short on bass, Chris Grant on drums, Peter Laupolu on keys. Bella Cololo's singing with us at the moment. We kind of have a rotating, door of singers quite often, but Bella's booked in for a bunch of shows with us, and a male vocalist called David Wall from Rotorua. So yeah, that's the lineup at the moment.
Cool. Well, hopefully we'll get to hear it live because that's where it should be.
So. Yeah, it's sounding great. It's sounding really great. It's that was part of the MO as well, was that I wanted an album that that I could play live, that I was going to enjoy playing live. Some tracks you record and they might have been fun to make, but when you go to play them live, they just don't.
Yeah, no, you can hear that this is going to sound awesome when we're in the room with you. And of course, it's kind of ironic because we're talking about this album of collaborations and we're all in isolation. So
yeah,
it's got to be weird, kind of doing your head in a little bit, but hopefully we'll get back to normal soon.
I think it's doing everyone's head in a bit. It's definitely a bit Groundhog Day-ish, but what can you do?
It's like, what day is today?
Yeah. Well, it's not as bad as the first lockdown where that was just like, that was a definite sort of, what day is it? And as kind of 1 o'clock every day for a while there, and before you were like, okay, this has to stop.
And it did for a while. Well, thank you very much for spending so much time talking to me about the record. Like I said, I can't wait to hear it live because that's obviously the way it needs to be heard. But in the meantime, hopefully you'll sell a bunch of them and we'll all be in the same room together listening at some point. So good luck with it. Yeah,
well, we're just the vinyl's about to be shipped here soon. So there's a double LP.
Yeah, that's going to be good.
Yeah.
Excellent.
So I'm excited to get that. Yeah.
All righty. Have a good rest of your day.
All right. Thanks, Marty.